Hey guys, it's Mark again. Got some new glasses, so get used to seeing these on. I'm going to get used to wearing them, hopefully. But just wanted to talk about step 2 to the Passport to Creativity system, which is believing that you are creative, because it's really all about that belief. I've had a lot of conversations with people when I tell them what I do. Some of them say, "Oh, I'm not creative." It's like the first thing that comes out of their mouth, and that it's just a myth. And I'm really hoping I can share with you why that is a myth. So stay tuned. So the first thing to look at when we talk about the belief of I'm not creative is understanding what a belief is. The definition of belief in the dictionary is simply something that we accept as true, an idea or a thought that we accept as true. Now sometimes we have evidence for those beliefs and sometimes we don't. But even if we have evidence, it may or may not have been the truth depending on our perspective, depending on the time that we formed that belief. Especially I'm not creative. That one tends to be formed fairly early in our lives. So let's take a little bit more deep dive on that. So I mentioned the idea that, I'm not creative comes at an early time in our age. We kind of determine that pretty young, but not too young. There's been research that shows that if somebody walks into a kindergarten class and asks the students, who here is creative? Every hand shoots way up in the air and they're all waving and they're all happy and they want to play with the construction paper and all the cool colors and have fun. But if you go into the same school's 5th grade class and you say, who here is creative? Maybe 1 or 2 people raise their hand. Maybe nobody does, because all of a sudden creative has become weird or different and and talented. And so nobody's really willing to raise their hand, or it's a timid kind of a raise. So something really happens in there that we define creativity very, very narrowly, and all of a sudden we're not that. So I mentioned this idea that creativity is becoming narrowly defined, and I think there are definitely schools today that they're doing things differently. But I know that when I was a kid, and I know for my generation and probably down a little bit before, creativity was not exactly encouraged outside of art, so after kindergarten, 1st grade, you start to have to get serious and grades and what's successful, and creativity is not the thing that is really the judgment of success. So it's, unless you're self-motivated, unless you have some kind of indication that you have some kind of a talent early on and you're encouraged to leverage that talent, you may not. You may just simply accept the idea that that's not for you and never really question it again. This next idea of never questioning your beliefs again, especially ones that form at a young age, especially I'm not creative, is important, because beliefs aren't just thoughts that we believe are true. They're actually filters that start to determine what information we're going to take in and what information we're going to ignore. And so we're basically going to identify ourselves as something, and we're going to see that as true because our brains are going to look for it. What I mean by filtering is basically our brains are being stimulated and being bombarded actually by stimuli. Sound waves are always happening, light waves are always coming in, too much information all at the same time, and we cannot process all that easily. So what we do is our brains create ways to make things easier. They create shortcuts and they chunk information into certain things. So it's going to take in information and ignore other information because it just can't handle all of it. And so our beliefs actually help that process by limiting information that is going to come into us. Most of the time that's a great thing, especially for survival, but it's going to hurt us when it comes to the opportunity for us to learn new things or to believe new things, because beliefs tend to be something that we hold on to really strongly and say, this is how it is. This is my truth. And we never give the opportunity for a better truth. So beliefs can be really hard to change, and nearly impossible in some cases, especially if you refuse to try to change. My hope is by recognizing what a belief is and how a belief can reinforce itself, you can still see how, even though it can reinforce itself, it doesn't necessarily make it true. Otherwise, people wouldn't have different beliefs that are directly opposed. They're seeing the evidence, no better look than politics, for why people believe what they believe. But hopefully you can see that beliefs are malleable, or they are choices that are made. And they might have been subconscious choices, they might have been conscious choices, but they are choices and they have the ability to be changed. One of the ways I like to help people change their belief system is with logic, because when I talk to somebody who says, I'm not creative, they tend to be very logical. So most people accept the idea that we have a right brain and a left brain, and that people that are considered logical tend to be left brain dominant. So my question to them is, do you only have a left brain? I mean, of course not. Everybody has both sides of their brain. So everybody has access to this creativity. That's kind of why I called my system the Passport to Creativity system. It's really all about accessing our creativity as opposed to not having it. It's there. We have our brain. It's a part of our brain. So this idea of accessing your creativity is really what it's all about. One of the challenges to accessing the creativity is that it's not exactly dominating your thoughts. In other words, it's always there, but it's really, really, really quiet. So it's really about understanding how to hear it and how to listen to your creativity and how to get into that space where creativity flows. So I mentioned this idea of the two brains. One of the reasons why it's hard to access the right brain is because the right brain isn't the verbal one. It's not the one making the thoughts in your head that are verbal or sequential in nature. So when you have a thought, it tends to be words or a sentence, and you hear that and you listen to that and you think that's logical, that makes sense to me, I'm going to go forward. Whereas creativity, or the right side of the brain, is nonverbal. It's more of, you might see images, or you might have a feeling in your body. You might have different sensations that, you might have something occur to you that you can't really exactly place why or where, because we don't have the direct line of communication with the right brain, and it's not talking to us. So it's hard to hear, it's hard to understand. An author, Timothy Galway, created a series of books based on this idea of the inner game. And one of the aspects of that was the idea of a self one and a self two. I don't know if they're the same as left brain and right brain, but they remind me of that. They seem very similar. And his idea was simply that there's a part of you, like in an example with tennis, when you're trying to make a serve, or you're trying to, a serve obviously is over your hand, or a stroke, that your body knows how to do it. Once it learns how to do it, needs muscle memory, etc., but it knows how to do it and take care of itself. And it doesn't really need a mental berating or reminder of how to do something. And in fact, a lot of times the left brain, or the self one, will try to help and create tension and screw up what is natural. And so I think it's very similar. If it's not the same thing, it's an analogy of the left brain and the right brain.